No, don't go on the internet. And action. Welcome back to Show and Tell. This is an almost weekly podcast about usually vintage knitting. Every so often, I sprinkle in other things of interest to me personally that are sometimes tangential to knitting. Sometimes they involve design, sometimes they involve art or architecture. And I hope that my viewers will enjoy that, especially when I take them on excursions into the netherworld of Manhattan that's right outside my door. Last time I wanted to celebrate a little bit of Women's History Month with you, and today I will go into part two, but first let me talk about what I'm currently working on. And actually, before I get to that, I was hoping to have the picture of Baby Gray wearing his gray sweater. I didn't have it in time for the last episode, but I do have it now. So I'll insert a little picture here or two for you to see. And now, without further ado, let me get back to what I've been working on for a couple of months now. You know, the projects that I undertake are usually things that involve quite a bit of time. I'm not looking to have a lot of throughput. I'm looking to do things that are complicated enough to challenge me and to take me a long time. So if at the end of the year I've knit 3 sweaters, for me, that's a lot because they're all over lace, or like this, all over lace, or like the project I'm currently involved in, which is a challenge in another way. Here's a picture of what the 1940s version looked like. I opted to do mine in a dark color. So I've shown you my 2 black sleeves, very ordinary, nothing special, but both the sleeves are done. And the 2 fronts of the sweaters are done as well. Recently, I pinned them to the partial back that I have, and I found I'm not completely happy with the shape of this neckline. I think it's up too high because there is going to be ribbing around here. So I am going to pull back part of this and redo this. I might also need to make it a little bit longer. If I put it under my arm, I think I might need just a tad more here. We'll see. I mean, I have time to work that through, but that's just minor tweaking to this. This is just some top stitching, and there will be top stitching down both sides of the flowers on both the left and the right panels. Now, I had shown you before this template I created, and these are matching up. They're matching up reasonably well to the shape and the length. Actually, this goes down a little. Where the fold is my waist, and this will go a little below the waist because I want it to cinch in at the waist and probably puff up a little. But anyway, I'm pretty confident that the shape of the fronts is going to work out for me. And I've been working on the back. So this is a big reveal this week because I've been talking about the back for a while. This pattern is a Tyrolean style sweater, which was popular in the 30s, 40s, even into the 50s, and comes forward to the present day. People are still enjoying knitting these Austrian mountain climber kind of folk sweaters. This is a fairly simple one, and the original pattern calls for no design on the back at all. But I decided that I wanted mine to not just be flowers on the front, but I thought there should be a motif on the back. And part of the reason why I chose the black background was it reminded me of Russian folk art, like the nested dolls, and also I think it's called kokloma, the black lacquered wooden objects, plates, and decorative boxes that have usually bright red flowers and yellow and green kinds of colorations. I came up with the idea of putting a Russian nested doll motif on the back. And I had shown you last time some of my inspirations. I thought I was going to try and make it Art Deco, kind of stay in the 1940s realm. I tried a variety of different motifs, and I was a little bit hesitant to actually start knitting them in either in stranded color work or in intarsia, because the geometry of triangles I thought wasn't going to play well, especially if I wanted them to have the three-dimensionality of the top of the Chrysler building. Anyway, long story short, I completely shifted gears and I thought, let me try and go with a more Russian folksy motif. So I started with this at the bottom. These strings will be woven in later, but I wanted to get something that really looked like a folk pattern. And then I found what I hope is a very beautiful red poppy with some green leaves. And there's shading on those leaves and shading within the poppy. So I thought, yes, I can use these basic colors that I've selected for the front, the hot pink, the red, the green, and yellow, but blending it in with some other shades to use up some scraps of old yarn that I have. So you're not going to see the whole thing today. You're going to have to come back and see where I go with it. But I did want to give you a little preview of where I'm going. I have blocked in big sections of just these two colors, the green and the red. Sorry, that's my row counter. Because I will duplicate stitch, and I've already kind of put in a little outline using a lace weight wool. I will duplicate stitch over this to get the shape of the leaf that I want. So there might end up being black in here and black in here. I'll duplicate stitch it over. And then the red is going to eventually be a poppy with petals. So I'm already past the underarm. Here's, oops. Here's where I started decreasing for the underarm. I'll be knitting straight up from this point. So I'm a good part of the way through the back, but I wanted to show you something else that I did as a helpful tool. Once I had this template, I went a step further to make the shape of the nested doll to make sure that it would fit on the back of my sweater. I wanted to get the size and the shape of it right. And I wanted to make sure that my pattern wasn't running into the underarm area, you know, that it wasn't too wide or that it wasn't too tall. And on here, I don't know if you can see this, I started sketching the poppy and some of the leaves, not all of it. So that as I was knitting, I could keep comparing to this. I wanted to try and keep my red confined to this area. I know I've gone out of the boundaries a little bit, but it's kind of touch and go, and a lot of tweaking will have to happen after the whole back is completed, because I'm going to want to just do an outline. I'll continue up and make an outline of the shape because I really do want there to still be very much of a black background on the nested doll. It's a little hard to explain, but I was afraid to knit it in as I went along in case it wasn't in the just right place. So like this, after I'm all done, I can really see where do I want to put the boundaries of the nested doll. So it's clearly an undertaking. I hope it will be worth the effort. You'll let me know what you think as I keep progressing along. The yarn that I'm using is very soft, 100% merino, very squishy from Morehouse Farm. It's their 2-strand. I believe it's DK weight. I'm getting about 5.5 stitches to the inch on size 5 needles, but at this point, I've already shifted down to a size 3 needle because I can see already that this is too wide for my back. And I did that pretty successfully on the front. I switched to the smaller needle up here. This is moss stitch. I know it's really hard with the light to capture that texture with the dark color like this, but there you can see it. So where the moss stitch is, I dropped down to a size 3 needle just to bring this in. In fact, Linda Ivell in her book mentioned doing that. I came up with it before I even read it in her book because the 40s pattern, the shoulders were really, really exaggerated. And I know on me that the shoulder would be out to here and it would just be flopping down unless I put in some Jagundo shoulder pad. And I thought it would look a little bit silly today. Probably not so much in the 1940s, but I think I still will have a pronounced shoulder. I think it still will give off the 1940s vibe without hanging down. We'll see. You know, it's a work in progress and it's a dynamic thing. It's changing with every row that I knit. The yarn is delightful to knit with. Not too splitty. I haven't had too much trouble with that. I've had to rip back just a very little bit, no problem doing that. But mostly I would say it's got a good squish factor, especially the ribbing, and it feels super soft, you know, next to the skin, soft, no problem. So thanks again to Erin and her sister for helping me out at VKL in selecting this yarn. I also wanted to bring you back to some of the other projects I'm working on that have not gotten a lot of love, that are sort of in the languishing section, are this lace, I'm calling it like a bed jacket. Haven't worked on it, but just didn't want you to forget about it. And I want you to hold me accountable that after I finish the black sweater, I want to go back to finishing this. I think I am about 80% of the way done. I just have to lengthen the sleeves a bit and lengthen the body, but there's no more shaping. Part of it is already assembled. I've already sewn in the sleeves, front and back. So, you know, not a lot more knitting to do. I can knit until I run out of yarn and get it to be longer, but it's repetitive now. You know, it's just a matter of repeating the same 10 rows, I think it is. So, you know, the temptation of wanting to cast on something new and something exciting is there. I have another sweater in mind that I'm going to design using a motif that I've seen elsewhere, a vintage motif, but I'm going to have to create just a very simple sweater. I desperately want to order I think I want to order cashmere for this one. But I keep reminding myself, no, don't go to your favorite discount yarn place in the UK and go ordering 150-gram cones of cashmere, because you really need to finish this. And then, oh, let's not forget this. How would you like to be confronted with something that looked like this? Any wonder I'm not going back to it. But, I do want to finish knitting for the Rink or the Lynx. I've made a lot of progress on it since I ripped most of it out and started reknitting it. This was my original fabric down here. Look how beautiful the back of that is. Stranded color work, gorgeous, not a lot of ends, but fabric too stiff, no give. Ripped out a whole sweater of that and went to doing this in Tarja, where I have all these ends. I won't even mind weaving them in. Let me just finish the sweater. So I haven't touched it for a while. This is the back. The back is complete. And I'm partway up the front. I think I'm about halfway up the front. Oh, yeah, and then there's a little matter of the sleeves. So I have my work cut out for me. I think when I finish the black sweater, I probably will go ahead and order the yarn, but while I'm waiting for it, I'll try and finish this up. I just didn't want you to think I'd forgotten about these because you haven't seen them for a while. And then there's one more, which I do pick up periodically. If I'm going on the bus or if I'm going to be riding the subway, this is my carry-along project. It's a scarf, lace. I seem to do a lot of lace, huh? And color work. It's in two parts that will be grafted together. This is the progress I've made on the second part. So not so much. I do touch it periodically. These are not my usual needles that I knit with. I bought these needles specifically for this project. They're made by a company called Indian Lakes. And I don't know if you can see that I'm swiveling this. They do swivel. It's a property of them. They're ergonomic. Notice that they're not round. This is a size 3, and this is a size 3. If they look different to you, it's because they are. This is round, cylindrical. This is not. This is hexagon shaped. So imagine a circle where you slice off on an angle 6 parts. That's going to pare it down. The overall diameter at its widest point is comparable to this, but it has all of those edges removed. The reason I bought these, this yarn is extra fine merino. It's pretty slick. I was having trouble controlling it, not just on my ChiaoGoos, but on the wooden needles that I have that are pretty slick. These are wood and they're not highly polished. They're not meant to be slippery. It's an easier grip and it grips the yarn just a little bit more. I was finding with a more slippery needle that I had to grip my knitting harder and it wasn't comfortable for my hands. And this is a lot of knitting and it's very tedious knitting. The stitches are teeny tiny. I don't even want to slip them off the needle for you to see, but if you drop one, good luck. They're really hard to find. They're yarn overs, they're knit through the back, purl through the back. Sometimes there's passing slip stitches over, sometimes it's over 2 stitches. It's not a simple sequence of stitches. So even putting in a lifeline is kind of worthless because it's hard to go back in and pick up the stitches. They're just so tiny. Anyway, they're on here. They don't slip off that readily. And I'm not aiming to finish this. I'd rather finish the lace jacket before this, because I see this as something that I can just continue to carry around with me for quite a while. And whenever I need something, not that this is simple, but in a certain way, it is simple because it's all right here. It's very portable. And the way the pattern is written, I was able to record each of the 32 lines in a little notebook that I can carry around with me. So I don't have to refer to a chart. I don't have to really have a device and skim across and try and, get it on my screen. I can see each row, and I've been checking off each row as I complete it. And then I have a system. Well, let me try and cover a lot of the pattern. So I have a system where I put, first I did check marks, and then I did like strikes through it. And then I did so many repeats that I had to figure out another way. I just didn't have room to put, 20 check marks next to it. So then I started doing like dots. Upper left, upper right, center dot, left and right, bottom dot, left and right. Now I'm drawing a line through 2 dots. So I have like a whole sequence of things that I can tell at a glance. I haven't looked at this for weeks. I can tell that that's the last row that I did because it has a line through it, and this one does not have a line through it. So even if I'm in the middle of a row, I can easily find where I'm at. I have stitch markers after every repeat. So even if I'm like 5 or 6 stitches into this, I can go back to the stitch marker. And if that row was like, knit 2, purl 2, knit through the back loop or whatever, I would be able to see that pretty quickly where I'm at. It's working. I am a little concerned about when I finish this section about grafting, because this is going to be grafted to this, and it's not like grafting stockinette to stockinette. This is grafting intricate lace to intricate lace. I don't know how it's going to look. I'm just hoping that it's going to be one little row that is going to be hard to find because there's so much else going on. This is another one of those things. We'll see how it goes when we get to that point. I like to keep it knotted just so it shortens the length of it and it's easier for me to get it into my project bag. And in case you haven't seen it before, this yarn comes on a cone. That's how fine the yarn is. I think that it's thinner than lace. I think it's more like cobweb weight. It's from ColourMart in the UK, and their nomenclature is 2/30 NM. They say lace weight, extra fine merino. And there were 730 meters on here to begin with. This is one of the 9 colors that I use for my genie. So I've been able to get an entire, well, there will be an entire scarf out of it. And one of the other colors I was able to, in addition to working on the genie with it, I was able to use the leftovers to knit my Spencer, sort of like a pale pink color. And I hope to use some of the other colors on the current project, the Tyrolean cardigan. Before Women's History Month ended, I wanted to share with you yet another designer who I recently stumbled upon by the name of Helen Dryden. Has anyone heard of her? I had never heard of her before, but some of her illustrations grace the covers of Vogue magazine. In fact, I'm trying to remember when I bought this poster. At some point shortly after I graduated from college, I saw a poster and I found it attractive and I had it framed and it was hanging in my apartment. And it ended up at my mother's house, stuffed in the back of a closet. I hadn't seen it for years. Then when my mom passed away, I brought it back to my place. So I actually have one of these 1920s Vogue magazine covers. It's the one from September 1922. I think at that point I already had developed quite a strong passion for Art Deco, but I certainly was unaware that the artist was this Helen Dryden. The field of color illustration was largely a man's field. You'll know names like Erte, Georges Barbier, you might know Dulac, Orlean Baxt, or Umberto Brunelleschi, I think might be how you pronounce it. And not only were they male, but they were mostly European. And then along comes this Helen Dryden, female and American. She also did covers for a magazine called Delineator, and I'll put a couple of pictures of those here as well. All right, let me read you a little something that I found about her. She was born in Baltimore in 1882. She showed artistic promise from a young age, but never received much art training and was mostly self-taught. She said of her work and her lack of formal training, "That is why my work is so entirely my own. It is a combination of things I like in the way I want to do them, rather than an unconscious reflection of the ideas of an admired master." In 1909, Dryden moved to New York to sell her drawings to fashion magazines. She faced rejection repeatedly for a year's time, but eventually received a deal with Vogue, which was under the art direction of Condé Nast at the time. This turned into a 13-year contract with the magazine. And I'll show you a couple of those covers here. And a picture of her as well from 1921. Her first work for Vogue was published in 1910. Catherine McClinton states in her book, Art Deco, A Guide for Collectors, that Art Deco thrived in the years between 1910 and 1935, reaching its high point between 1925 and 1935. This timeline closely parallels Dryden's most prolific working period. Dryden's key inspiration is also often associated with the start of Art Deco. Though Art Deco has its roots in Art Nouveau, the Ballet Russe in Paris and the costume designs and original drawings of Leon Bakst had great impact on the decorative arts of the period. Dryden often cited Bakst, the Russian ballet, and all things French as the inspiration for her inventive and fanciful drawings. Osbert Lancaster said the colors were the best and most lasting legacy of the Russian ballet to Art Deco, referring to jade green, purple, every variety of crimson and scarlet, and above all, orange. Dryden wanted to bring Bakst's vision and color to the American magazines, as she found the illustrations of the day to have a blatant lack of appeal. She achieved this in her work for Vogue. Her Vogue covers often depict at least one full-figure woman in an imagined setting and heavily applied decoration, be it dress patterns or surrounding floral elements. Her work for Vogue is a testament to early Art Deco, which was sinuous and more closely related to the Art Nouveau movement. The term Art Deco covers a lot of ground, and not all of the art of the 20s and 30s is Art Deco, and not all Art Deco has the same characteristics. Early Art Deco has graceful feminine forms, while later examples are characterized by cubist forms, as seen in the delineator covers. However, at Vogue, Dryden was part of the phase of Art Deco that was tied to the rhythm of the times, as reflected in the ballet and the designs of Bakst, Erté, and Paul Éribe. This produced a gay, fanciful style that was still based on genuine values. Like Erté and Barbier, two pioneers of Art Deco fashion illustration, Dryden drew her models in a decorative and unrealistic manner. Her work was bright, clean-lined, and highly imaginative. She created a fabricated space around her models, filling the cover with swirling water or clouds, flora, or the occasional animal. Later, Deco artists began adapting avant-garde ideas, and those changes are on full display in her delineator covers. They're starkly different from her Vogue work. The crop is tighter. The images show mostly women from the collarbone up, in a sense, streamlining the image to its essential parts. The colors are more muted, her lines fuzzier, and above all, lacking in the decoration that the writers of the delineator articles and other practitioners of Art Deco found redundant. Similar to the modern home, her illustrations have been stripped down to what is most efficient and streamlined. Some of the works take on a cubist mentality with intersecting lines and shapes that create dress forms and flowers. Dryden's visages also undergo a change, looking similar to Brancusi's Muse. And the art of Deco painter Jean Dupas, who tended to dehumanize his characters, turning them into pretty sharp-featured but expressionless mannequins. She went on to become an industrial designer, working for the Studebaker company, designing the interior of a car called the President. And working alongside Raymond Loewy, who designed the exterior. Between the mid-1930s and late 1930s, she was retained for $100,000 a year, giving her the title of highest paid woman artist. Her name even appeared in advertisements and articles for the vehicles that she worked on. At that time, a Studebaker cost $665. So imagine that kind of salary. The appeal of mass production rose after the 1929 stock market crash, but products still needed to appeal to consumers. This is where industrial designers and Art Deco themes came in. Streamlining of products in America was a popular design choice. Though not American in origin, streamlining's widespread application in the 30s to the design of vehicles and stationary consumer goods was America's distinctive contribution to the development of Art Deco. I'll leave a link to this article that I found, but I just wanted to wrap up by saying that the author said Helen Dryden and perhaps other such women artists now lost to time deserve to be mentioned in the same ranks of men. If that doesn't speak to Women's History Month, I can't imagine what does. So that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this little diversion. I'll try and keep things interesting for you, and I'll try and keep knitting things that will appeal to your knitting senses. I'd love to know if you're as big an Art Deco fan as I am, and if you've tried to incorporate any Art Deco designs into your own knitting. Take care, everyone. It's a joy to be with you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.